This chapter happens before school starts that year. Chapter -1, earlier that year before school started. It was game night, and the band was worried. It was the last week before school started again, and there were concerns. Not about the party that next week, they all knew their roles. No, they were concerned because Amelia insisted that this year actually have a plan, and half of them hated plans. They mostly hated plans because they were terrible at them, but they definitely hated Amelia's plans because far too often they worked. The band was gathered around a gaming table in the basement of Liara's house. Her father was teleconferencing in a soundproof room upstairs, and the four of them were sprawled around in the ergonomic chairs, looking down at the mapped hexagons in front of them. Liara, as always, was making notes about her future robot boyfriend on her tablet. Raina was reading an adult romance comic on her phone, listening but otherwise devoid of agency. Destiny had regretfully forgotten to charge his phone, so it was dutifully plugged in, just out of reach. Amelia had already started the yearly planning, though they were barely 3 turns into the game. All right, everyone, this is our sophomore year in high school. We're all poised on the brink of an astonishing future. We've survived the awkward first year of high school with no major damage. Liara looked up from her tablet at the game board. No major damage? Raina snorted. What about Destiny's Lucy encounter? Destiny meant Raina's expulsion for fighting. Amelia's parade float debacle? Liara added. Amelia smiled uncomfortably. No major damage. We are far from the worst in the school, even though the school is small and everyone has known each other forever and ever, and will never let anyone live anything down. She sounded less and less sure of herself as she continued. Even despite Liara's killer robot mistake, we should be in the clear, ready for a bright new year. Liara smiled coolly. It was not a killer robot. No one or thing died. At most, it was a property damage robot, and thankfully Ms. Evans came to her senses when presented with empirical evidence and corrected the smear before it was absolutely necessary. Destiny looked at her as if she were crazy. Smear? You mean the B+ she gave you for the essay? Liara's eyes narrowed dangerously. That paper was an A paper. According to her precious rubric, it was an A+ paper, and she gave me a B+ because she saw me writing it before class. There was nothing in her precious rubric that said, it's not remotely my fault that she has varying standard, and it's a good thing for her little Kia that she chose to fix it. Destiny was horrified. You would have destroyed that lady's car because you didn't manage your time well? Liara turned on him like a snake. I managed it perfectly well. I finished the paper 3 minutes before class started. Her husband is a senator, gasped Destiny. Her husband is a fool, Liara roared, for marrying a woman who could not follow her own precious rubric. Raina was almost in tears from laughter at this point, as Amelia stared sadly down at her agenda on neatly color-coded cards. The room was silent. Raina leaned over to Liara. Say precious rubric again. Liara smiled, returned at last to her quiet and placid girl they all, and the world, generally knew her as. Precious rubric, she whispered. Amelia straightened her already perfectly straight note cards. Are we done? Can we get to my thing? Is your thing done now so we can stop rehashing the past and talk about the future? Liara sniffed. Only if you trade me some skeins for these chords. Otherwise the hash may be read all day. Amelia tossed a couple of cards down on the table contemptuously. Though if you think my planning session will make you a better homesteader than me, you are dead wrong. Raina set her comic aside for a moment. So, what's the deal with this planning session anyway? I recognize that this year is important, because every year is important. But what can we really plan for? We don't know our schedules, and even if we did, we can't change them. We have no idea what's going to happen this year. Yeah, we'll be together, but other than that, what is there to plan? Our entrance into adulthood? Liara quirked an eyebrow. Too late for half of us. Too soon for the other half. Destiny was terribly confused now, only to gasp out a, what? Liara looked at him and said deadpan, well, half of us are virgins, Destiny. What? Which half? What counts? His brain appeared to be overloading. Amelia shook her head. Not what I meant. Despite what horrifically sexist movies in the past have taught us, virginity is a construct unworthy of our attention. Raina shoved Destiny. Guess we know which half she falls on. Amelia stared at her icily. Do we really want to talk about sexual conquest and experience in front of Destiny here? It does seem a bit rude, even cruel. She raised a single eyebrow. And might embarrass some of us, especially since one of us appears not to have done the math about who might be who. Raina looked confused for a moment. Wait, I haven't. We live in an enlightened age. Virginity no longer applies to women who have only been with men. Raina suppressed a shudder of realization. Huh? Oh. Yeah. We should probably curb any discussions of sexual stuff, at least until it's after 2 a.m. That's when the level of honesty is okay, right? She cocked an eyebrow at Liara, having finally done the math. Really? No? Liara smirked. Sex requires 2 people. Sex with any of you would be awkward. Most other people suck. Raina considered this, nodded, shrugged. Says I find a host for my robot boyfriend, though, the percentage of people eligible for a Orochi sacrifice will drop precipitously. She wiggled her eyebrows at Destiny. Perhaps to 0. I'm willing to share. Destiny looked as if he were about to faint. Amelia shook her head. Stop teasing the poor boy. He will not be losing his vaunted imaginary virtue to a robot. Liara shrugged and returned to her tablet as Amelia picked up the pink cards. Destiny, you're first. He looked at her incredulously. I'm the pink cards? Well, I didn't have red, and you're the one in most need of guidance. She smiled at him until his frustration faded. Roll the dice first, Des. Then we'll talk about your goals for the year. Destiny picked up the dice and rolled them. After the loot was divvied up, he shook his head. I don't need a guidance counselor. I know what I want and how to get it. She eyed him innocently. And what do you want, Destiny, dear boy? A normal high school year. No drama, no magic, no silliness. Go to school, hang with you guys, pass classes, maybe ask some girls out, maybe get some crappy job. He sighed heavily. I have to admit I'm a bit tired to be treated like a loser by you guys just because my plans are less grandiose and impossible than yours. Liara nudged Raina until she spoke. You guys are a bit mean about all this. Just because we don't plan like you tend to look down on us. Liara looked daggers at Raina for a second, then said, That's fair. Amelia paused, the pink cards arrayed like a fan. It's not because you're a loser, it's because you have such amazing potential, but no intention to use it. Your lack of planning means you will likely go to waste. Raina doesn't plan, but she just tends to fall into things. And people. I worry about you just fading into the background. And that would be a serious tragedy. She stared at him earnestly. He broke under her gaze. He knew that they loved him like sisters and were only looking out for him. Fine, but I deserve some cobbles for my trouble. She handed him the game cards before returning to the pink ones. By some bizarre twist of fate, you've already covered most of what I wanted to say. You will, of course, continue to hang out with us and pass classes. But, of course, I'll be working on the date some girls part. Somehow this led to a bunch of chatter, and the planning session devolved into what was normal for game night, with petty discussions and idle gossip. Amelia got more and more upset. Finally, she fumed enough and was at her breaking point. All right, that's enough then. The raising of Amelia's voice was rare enough that it was like an EMP had gone off in the room. All devices forgotten, they stared at her. I am tired of this. I'm tired more of the same and accepting who we are and just pray for safety and security. This is not who we are. We are the band and we do not have fine times. We have great times. We do not have a passable year, an acceptable year, a year that nothing too bad happens. We have a great year. Or a terrible year. But this will not be a year to be forgotten. This will be a year we will remember for the rest of our lives. None of you is going to stop this year from being the most magical, amazing, crazy year of our lives. If I have to drag you kicking and screaming for your bedrooms in the middle of the night, this year will be filled with adventure. It would have made sense for there to be a thunderclap, or a power surge, or something exciting and real to punctuate the important speech about how magical and crazy the year was going to be. But there wasn't.